Right now, somewhere in your office, there's a person who disappears when the hard work starts. You know exactly who it is. Everyone does. Nobody says it out loud, but the group has already made a quiet decision about that person. And that decision is older than language, older than money, older than the concept of a job. What happened to that person in a world before HR departments, before courts, before anyone could hide behind a title? The answer isn't what you think, and it says something uncomfortable about the invisible forces running your life right now. Here's the story most people carry about ancient humans. Life was brutal. Everyone worked constantly or they died, and if you slacked off, the tribe probably killed you or left you behind for the wolves. That version feels logical. It also turns out to be mostly wrong. Anthropologist Marshall Salins spent years re-examining how much hunter-gatherers actually worked, and what he found flipped the whole picture. Richard Lee's fieldwork with the Dobe Jew/Hwansi, a group in southern Africa, produced data suggesting that many foragers met their basic needs with something that in 1969 Time magazine summarized as a work week that seldom exceeded 19 hours. 19 hours. These were not people grinding from dawn until collapse. They had significant leisure time. They rested, they played, they talked. Rest was not shameful. Rest was normal. So the real question isn't whether the tribe punished rest. It didn't. The real question is what happened when someone kept taking from everyone around them while giving almost nothing back. And the answer to that question changes how you understand every social group you have ever been part of. Picture a camp of roughly 40 people somewhere in the dry season, and Kim Hill's fieldwork with the Ache of Paraguay, one of the most thoroughly documented forager groups in the world. Recorded band sizes averaging exactly that range, 40 to 50 people, a group just large enough to survive, small enough that no one was a stranger. Not the way you know your neighbors, where you recognize their face and maybe their dog's name. These people knew your sleep patterns, your mood when you were hungry, how long it took you before you volunteered to carry something heavy. They knew whether you were there when the water needed collecting this morning. There was no privacy here. None. Now, one person in that camp, a man in his 20s, physically capable, has a pattern. When the hunting party assembles, he has a sore leg. When firewood needs hauling, he's somewhere else. When the evening meal arrives, he's present. Every time. He eats well, he contributes rarely. And in a band of 40 people, there are no strangers. Every meal eaten, every load not carried, every morning missed, witnessed by the same 40 faces, day after day, season after season. The tribe isn't angry yet, but it's watching. And what comes next isn't a trial. It's something quieter, and in some ways, far more devastating. What's actually happening in that camp is a problem that evolutionary biologists and anthropologists call free riding. A free rider is someone who draws benefits from group cooperation without contributing to it. And in a small cooperative society, the list of things that count as contribution is much longer than hunting. Anthropologist James Woodburn's foundational work on egalitarian societies described how immediate return hunter-gatherers shared food widely, often across the whole camp. That system kept everyone alive during injury, illness, unlucky seasons, pregnancy, and old age. It was insurance. But insurance systems only function when most people pay into them. Hannah Lewis's 2014 paper on Hadza food sharing identified what she called a puzzle. How can demand sharing, a system where others can claim your food when you bring it to camp, survive when some people rarely hunt but still receive? The answer Lewis proposed was mobility. High mobility, she argued, helps maintain cooperation. If a camp becomes socially unpleasant because of one person's behavior, people can and do leave. The camp fractures, reorganizes, and the difficult person finds themselves with fewer allies. This sounds like a gentle consequence. It isn't. But that's not the strangest part. The strangest part is that the tribe almost never needed to formally punish the free rider. It had something older and more precise than punishment. It had memory. In a band where everyone knows everyone, your reputation is not an abstract thing. It is the living record of every choice you've made in front of these people, and it determines, concretely, physically, who shares food with you when you're sick, who helps raise your children, who chooses to sleep near you, who teaches you where the water is when the dry season comes early. Christopher Boehm, in his research compiled in Moral Origins in 2012, documented a direct mechanism. People identified within their band as selfish or unproductive received measurably less assistance during hardship. not as a formal punishment, but as the natural consequence of eroded trust. And here is the counterintuitive science moment, the one that stays with you. The tribe did not need to kill the laziest person. It had something colder. It could simply stop needing him. Think about that for a second. The process was not sudden. Anthropologically, it moved in stages. First came teasing, jokes at the person's expense, light mockery with an edge underneath, then gossip, criticism, the slow erosion of trust, then fewer invitations to cooperate, then worse marriage prospects. Then people began choosing to camp elsewhere when the group split. Each stage was a quieter and quieter door closing. By the final stage, the person was not expelled in any dramatic sense. They had simply been subtracted from the group's calculations. And in a world where losing the group meant losing your food security, your defense, your medical knowledge, your childcare support, and your protection while you slept, being subtracted from those calculations was as close to a death sentence as the tribe needed to issue. Being subtracted from the group's calculations, you already know what that feels like. Maybe not with firewood and hunting parties, but with the same invisible machinery underneath. Think about the last group project at work, or the last time a friend kept canceling plans but kept asking for favors. You didn't call a formal meeting. You didn't write a policy. You just quietly started giving that person slightly less information, less effort, less warmth. You stopped looping them into things. You became politely unavailable. That is not a modern social behavior. That is 30,000 years of cooperative survival encoded into you, running automatically, without your permission. And the research on the Agta hunter-gatherers of the Philippines, published in 2017 in Nature Communications by Daniel Smith and colleagues, adds one more layer. Their study found that skilled storytellers in Agta camps were preferred social partners and had measurably higher reproductive success, not the strongest hunters, the storytellers. Because in a small group, the person who keeps everyone connected, who processes the day's events into meaning, who makes people feel like a group rather than a collection of individuals, that person is doing something essential and irreplaceable, which means the question your ancient ancestors were really asking about you wasn't simply, did you carry your share today? It was, does this group work better because you're in it? But that still doesn't answer the question researchers kept running into, the one about what happened when quiet withdrawal wasn't enough, and what that tells us about how much of this we actually understand. Here is what the data cannot reach. We don't actually know how any specific ancient group handled any specific person. The research on the Ju Huanzi, the Hadza, the Ache of Paraguay, the Agta, these are real living people observed in the last century, not direct windows into Paleolithic camps. The Ache, studied by Kim Hill, Kristen Hawkes, and A. Magdalena Hurtado, showed foraging effort that was significantly higher than many other groups. They worked harder at hunting and gathering than many groups did at farming. So, there was no single tribal life. Ecology, seasons, group size, kinship structure, and plain luck all shifted what cooperation looked like and how it was enforced. Christopher Boehm's concept of reverse dominance hierarchy, the idea that groups collectively pushed back against would-be dominators through ridicule, gossip, and deliberate refusal, tells us the same social tools that punished arrogance also pressured freeriders. But how far that pressure went, in which groups, under which conditions, in which seasons, the honest answer is that we cannot always know. The open question underneath all of this is the one that matters most. When you stopped being someone your group needed, did you know it before they did? There's a person in your office who disappears when the hard work starts. Everyone knows who it is. Nobody says it out loud. But the quiet decision has already been made, the same way it was made in every camp across every dry season for tens of thousands of years. Not with violence, not with a formal verdict, but with the slow, precise withdrawal of trust. The tribe didn't need a court. The court was everyone's memory, and everyone's memory never forgot. Your social instincts are not a flaw. They are ancient technology.